Why do 4 fluids need to include salt, saline, but not any other nutrient or substance? Whenever a patient needs fluids, it seems that the doctors and nurses always provide saline intravenously. I see it all the time in medical dramas, and the one time in my life where I received 4 fluids. Never just distilled water, and never anything else in the solution: glucose, potassium, magnesium, iron, etc. Why? Nutrients and minerals are fine, but not necessary. Salt is necessary. Water likes to move from areas with less salt to areas with more, to balance out the water content in both areas. When this happens across a permeable barrier, say, a cell wall, it's called osmosis. Osmosis is vital to cell health. If a bunch of non-salty water gets into your bloodstream, it will be rapidly absorbed by the much saltier blood cells. Absorbed until they swell up, or even burst. Having a bunch of your red blood cells burst all at once is potentially fatal. It's noteworthy that sometimes someone will get and fall with water that is less or more salty than the blood. For instance, if you have an edema, water with a higher salt content will be introduced to suck the water out of your cells and reduce dangerous swelling. The salt isn't there as a nutrient. It is there to balance osmotic pressure. If you have semi-permeable membranes, like cell walls, then the mineral concentration tries to balance between the two sides. Since the salt can't travel through the membrane, that will happen by water traveling from the side with less salinity to the side with more salinity, or rather, it travels both ways, but is more likely to stay on the side with higher salinity, bloating your cells and worst case destroying them. I see you, doctor, here. There are various 4 fluids and they are needed for different things. In most cases, 4 fluids are used to compensate for dehydration or low blood pressure. The fluids will go to the intravascular space, and in most of them, also to the space around our tissues. That means that fluids with different electrolytes than our bodies will cause an osmotic difference that will cause water inside our body to move around, from inside cells to outside cells, from around cells to inside the blood vessels, and vice versa. Sodium, that's where saline comes from, is the major driver of osmosis. Therefore, fluids in general will need to have sodium in them to match the sodium concentration in the fluids of our body, inside our cells, around the tissues, the blood, so as not to cause these fluids to move around too much and cause problems. Sometimes we want the sodium in our body to decrease, and we will use fluids without any saline, with only glucose. Sometimes we want a minimum caloric intake, when we can't give food by mouth or tube inside the GI tract, and will use water with glucose only. Sometimes that sugar water needs sodium and potassium as well to keep the electrolyte balance in the body. Sometimes we will want to change the acidity in the body and use basic substances, bicarbonate, which also comes with sodium, because it is a salt of sodium bicarbonate. Sometimes we want to dehydrate some tissue, for example, brain tissue, when there is high pressure inside the brain, and use fluids with ~20x the sodium concentration inside the body. Pure distilled water has nothing dissolved in it. It's like an empty space. All of the stuff in our blood cells would love to be in the empty space, instead of crammed into the cells. If you give them pure water, all of the stuff will try to escape the cells into the empty space, and the cells will explode. This is bad. You don't want exploding cells. We call this process hemolysis. 4 solutions need to have some stuff in them to prevent this from happening. Salt is easy. If you make the 4 fluid about as salty as the blood, then the cells won't explode. You don't need to use salt, you can use sugar or other compounds too, as long as it's similar to the blood. Water with about 5% sugar, 0.9% salt, bicarbonate, lactate, or acetate will all prevent the cells from exploding. We call those isotonic solutions. Normal saline solution is 0.9% sodium chloride by weight. Often the fluid does actually contain a bunch of other stuff. In fact, on the rare occasions we give pure water, we do include glucose. But the main reason is that sodium is the main electrolyte in the blood that controls water balance, and running fluids into the blood can affect the concentration significantly. Pure water has no solute, so will dilute the blood significantly. This causes low sodium, which can cause seizures and things, but can also cause brain swelling and issues with the body's fluid balance. On a cellular level, it also causes cells to swell and burst because the salt is stuck inside the cell and the water rushes in to equilibrate. The fluids that they usually give are relatively close in sodium concentration to the blood. So you are providing volume that's close in composition to the person's existing plasma. Common fluids are normal saline, 0.9% NaCl, and Ringer's lactate, which has potassium and some other stuff along with sodium.
Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss our next exciting video.